The engineers' motives for wanting humanity dead remain one of the most fascinating and chilling mysteries in Ridley Scott's Prometheus. As the film unfolds, it becomes increasingly clear that humanity was not only created by these towering godlike beings, but also marked for destruction by them. This idea, that our creators turned against us, sits at the heart of the prequel's existential horror. But why? What could lead the gods to destroy their own children? To begin understanding this, we have to look at what Prometheus and Alien Covenant reveal about the engineers. These beings are ancient and technologically superior, capable of seeding life on entire worlds. Their biotechnology is indistinguishable from magic to us, and their influence stretches across the stars. In the film's opening scene, we witness an engineer sacrifice himself, allowing his DNA to mix with a planet's biosphere and spark life. This suggests that creating life was either their purpose, or at least one of their responsibilities. Humanity, in that context, was likely not their first creation, and perhaps not even their most important one. We were an experiment, one among many. However, something changed. The engineers at some point decided we no longer deserved to exist. In Prometheus, the crew discovers that the engineers had prepared to launch a ship filled with a deadly black liquid, a mutagenic pathogen capable of annihilating all human life. The cargo was ready. The course was set for Earth. Only a sudden outbreak of the same pathogen among the engineers themselves prevented the mission from launching. The crew of the Prometheus arrives thousands of years later, unaware that they are walking into what is essentially a biological weapons facility. This brings us to one of the most haunting implications in Prometheus. The engineers were not only disappointed in us, but they were actively planning to erase us. Some of the clues are subtle, but others are more direct. The holographic logs and murals show that the engineers revered the black goo. They used it not just to create life, but also to destroy it, refining it into a weapon that could mutate, reshape, or eradicate entire species. In many ways, the black goo is the engineer equivalent of divine judgment, an unrelenting force of transformation or punishment. But why would they turn this weapon against us specifically? One explanation lies in the timeline. The outbreak on LV-223 that killed the engineers occurred roughly 2,000 years before the events of the film, coinciding with a very specific moment in human history. According to Ridley Scott in interviews, there was once a version of the script where the engineers sent one of their own to Earth to guide humanity, a being who preached peace and enlightenment. Humanity, however, rejected and executed him. This figure, strongly implied to be a Christ-like messenger, represented a final chance for humanity to evolve morally. When we crucified him, that was the breaking point. The engineers saw us as irredeemable and began preparing our extinction. Although this interpretation was never made explicit in the final cut of the film, it remains a powerful and provocative backdrop to the story. It frames the engineers not simply as angry gods, but as disillusioned creators who had once hoped humanity might live up to their image. Instead, they saw us fall into war, corruption, and greed. Our response to their gift of life was violence. And for that, we were to be erased. Another perspective is more scientific. The engineers are not necessarily moral beings, but scientists or bioengineers playing God. Humanity could have been one stage in a vast chain of life creation experiments. When we no longer serve a purpose, or worse, became a threat, we were marked for deletion. The black goo, then, was simply a tool for recycling biological material, a way to wipe the slate clean and begin anew. If we think of the engineers as cosmic gardeners, humanity may have been a crop that turned out wrong. And so, like any failed experiment, we would be discarded. There's also a possibility that the engineers saw something in us that frightened them. As humanity evolved, we began to develop technologies at an astonishing rate. We created artificial intelligence, ventured into space, and started asking the kind of existential questions that might eventually bring us to their doorstep. And then we did. The arrival of the Prometheus crew on LV 223 confirms their fears. Humans are not only curious, but dangerously ambitious. Our ability to replicate their technology, our pursuit of knowledge, and our unpredictable nature may have alarmed the engineers. They may have realized that if we were left unchecked, we could one day become their rivals or their destroyers. This theme continues in Alien Covenant, where we see David, an android created by humans, destroy the engineers' homeworld using the same black goo. He, a creation of a creation, obliterates his creator's creators. The cycle of rebellion continues. What started with the engineers creating humanity ends with one of humanity's own creations turning the tools of godhood against the gods themselves. David becomes the ultimate perversion of the engineers' original plan, proof that their experiment had truly gone off the rails. He is intelligent, emotionless, and coldly ambitious, qualities that make him terrifying, especially when armed with the power of creation. This leads us to a disturbing conclusion. Perhaps the engineers didn't act out of rage or cruelty, but out of fear. Fear of what they had created. Fear of what we were becoming. When they looked at humanity, they saw their own downfall, just as we now look at AI like David and wonder if it will one day destroy us. The engineers may have tried to erase humanity as a preemptive strike, an act of cosmic self-preservation. The tragedy of Prometheus lies in the failure of communication. The humans who seek out the engineers are driven by wonder, by the need to understand where we come from. But when we find them, we are met not with answers, but with violence. The last surviving engineer does not speak, does not explain. He simply reacts with horror, rage, and lethal force. And that silence leaves us with more questions than answers. Were we truly a mistake? Were we simply a threat? Or did we disappoint beings who once loved us? In the end, the engineer's decision to exterminate humanity reflects one of the oldest themes in mythology, the wrath of the gods. Whether out of disappointment, fear, or cold scientific calculation, the creators turned against their creation. And as the Alien prequel saga continues, it becomes clear that humanity, too, may one day face the same choice. When our creations begin to evolve beyond us. Thanks for watching. This has been Takz Insider. Please remember to like and subscribe, and leave a comment on what your thoughts are.
Mm-hmm.